This is TWiT.
Pew Research Center published the results of a new nationwide survey that focused on screen time and device distractions, among other things. And while we may think that Generation Z is obsessive about their screens, the report seems to indicate that those kids would agree, one, and maybe they aren't very thrilled about it either. Joining us to talk about this is Georgia Dow, senior editor at iMore and psychotherapist. Welcome back, Georgia. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to get you here. So first, as parents, I would say it's easy to look at our children and think they're too obsessed with screen technology. I know, at least in my case, my parents said the same thing about me when I was a kid and I was playing all the time on my Commodore 64.
And look where you are now.
Exactly. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to tell them to this day. No, are things different now? Are we looking at a different moment in time and the different obsession around technology than, let's say, 25 years ago?
No, it's probably about the same. I think that the hardest thing with getting back to school is that it's very different. Like children usually have a lot of time to be able to do whatever they want with. Usually they can just play video games or watch TV or, be on YouTube till their brains melt. And then you have to kind of shift back to school where you are sitting for 8 hours a day with a teacher chatting away at you. And that's a huge difference. So it can be really difficult for children to adjust, which I think was the same beforehand. If you're playing outside all the time and you have to sit down in a chair and stay there, that's also really difficult. So even if your children are active, this can be a very anxiety-inducing time for them.
Absolutely. So the Pew study shows obviously how concerned parents are. It touches on a number of topics, but it focuses on that at one point, and not just about their children's screen time, but also their own. Maybe talk a little bit about how parents are. I mean, in many cases, obviously, parents are their children's role models, and it's no different with technology, right?
It's true. And I can see when I'm bored or I'm sitting or I'm waiting in line, used to be that I would look at a magazine or I would talk to someone, and now I grab my phone and I play some sort of inane video game or search the web for some sort of news story. And so I think that all of us use technology to kind of deal with boredom. And that's one of the things that you want your children to kind of get ready with, because even if you have the best school for your child, they will spend a good amount of their time being bored. And so probably one of the first tips you'd want to help them to get ready for school is to limit their time playing technology, watching TV, being on the web, so that they can practice being bored. It's a skill. I know it doesn't sound good, but it's actually a skill. The more you can be bored and delay gratification, better things come to you.
Absolutely.
So I want to get back to what you said about brains melting while watching YouTube, because that is where I am.
You've seen the melted brains?
I have. So I mean, yes, myself included. But my 13-year-olds don't play Fortnite, and so I know I should be grateful for that alone. But I kind of wish they did, because the alternative is, hours of YouTube. And so, school started, they're back in school, they work really hard and they do all their homework. And then it's just, they're exhausted just by just being an 8th grader, being a 13-year-old boy and being, having to do school and the social and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, all they want to do is just veg out and watch. And it's like sciencey videos. I look at their history. It's nothing bad, but it's just the fact that it feels like a little bit like a drug.
It is a drug. And even if you're watching something that is great, your brain is being passively induced with information to that. And so if you can limit the amount of time that your children spend on technology, so we have a reward-based system that the kids do work or, do chores or other things and they're around the house, then they can earn time that they could play video games or watch TV or deal with that. So something that helps them kind of moderate that time is great, because the thing is that you are exhausted, and a little bit of time to be able to shut down is great for everyone's brain. But also, being bored is when you're creative. It's when you think of different things. You think outside of the box. You plan for something. You'll play something else that may not be as passively interesting. And so you want to give everyone, adults included, that space to be able to do that. If I'm watching something that's interesting, I'm not going to be clearing out my office and cleaning it, which is a complete mess if you can take a look behind me, that I really need to get done. But if I didn't have tech, I'll be cleaning my office, because that's the next best thing.
Yeah, I think the challenge that I have, and I don't think it was in this report necessarily, but it was something I heard earlier this summer about how Generation Z, to overgeneralize, let's say, but how they experience like a phone boredom. How even though the internet is this access to unlimited avenues of the world, you still find yourself staring at a screen, being bored at everything that you possibly do. Yet that isn't enough for us to put it down, or for someone to put it down. Instead, you just continue like dwelling in this boredom state while staring at your screen. I know I've done that, and I've tried really hard in the past couple of years to kind of fight the urge to just endlessly scroll when I'm bored, because I don't get any true personal satisfaction out of it. But it takes a lot of effort. I have to imagine that's more difficult for children than it is for adults, and I know as an adult it's really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And what we're doing is you're also, whatever you're doing at any moment, you're training your brain to be better at it. So while you're staring and having all of this passive feedback of something being fed to you, and phones and apps and websites are made to be addictive. That's what they spend their money on, is to keep you there. They want to keep you there. If it's Facebook, they want your information. If you're not there, they're not getting your information for that. So they spend a lot of time to try to make this as passively enjoyable as possible to be there. And what you're doing is, the longer that you spend on that, you're actually teaching your brain to be more and more addicted to that. It's the same thing as any other addiction. So the ways to be able to curb your time to that is actually put physical limits on that. So, I'm not going to use tech until 9 p.m. at night, or for the next hour, I'm not going to use anything. And just feel how difficult it is to be able to put your phone down. To be honest, if my phone is that close to me and I have a few moments that I'm bored, I almost pick it up without even I'm not even subconsciously, I'm picking up my phone and taking a look at it. I haven't even thought about it. And that's a scary thing. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one that suddenly realizes that their phone is on their hand while they're watching a TV show or even doing something else that usually I'd be able to watch all the way through.
So putting your phone away, putting it away from you, that's one tip. What are some other tips for really teaching kids self-regulation? Because looking at, if you have teenagers, 4 or 5 more years, and then they're going to be out of the house, ideally. And,
no, they're going to be out of the house.
And so it's like we have all these rules, like you have to plug your phone in our room at night, and you have to, and it's like, once they're... once they're out of the house, they're not going to be, I'm not going to be there anymore to make them do that. What are some tips in teaching them to do that themselves?
Right. So when they're really young, when your children are young, they may be too young to learn self-discipline. The same thing where you have to help them with brushing their teeth or making sure that they do their homework. And some children are very self-motivated and some children are not. The first thing that you want to do is have that conversation. I have this conversation a lot with my children because it's really important. I want them to be able to go to a restaurant and be able to have a nice meal at a nice restaurant and not be like, when are we getting home so I can go back to my addiction? Mm-hmm. And so my kids themselves said, well, maybe even at this time where they play like 2 hours a day, they're like, we might still be playing too much time. And that's only during the summertime. Though today they're actually melting their brains. It's my son's birthday today. So they're melting their brains today with a full day of video games. So there's a slight amount of irony as I hear them playing behind me. But they actually talk about that they understand how the brain works because, like, lucky or not lucky, I'm their mom. And so they want to be able to be better at delaying gratification. They want school to not be so torturous because, again, the more that you're not used to delaying gratification, the more torturous school is. So adding some no tech times to the whole family's day, you'll hate me for a little while, but later you'll love me for it, is wonderful. Because while you're all sitting there bored, someone's going to be like, well, let's play a board game, or let's do something else, or let's play cards, or let's go for that bike ride, the bikes that have been rusting in the garage that we haven't really been being as active with as we should. And also, if you do that before you go to sleep, like an hour and a half or 2 hours before they go to sleep, because sleep is something else before school that you're going to want them to get ready to, is, listen, let's have no technology for 2 hours before sleep. Let's read or play a game or chat, which also doesn't happen with technology around. then sleep makes it easier as well because your brain waves are just a little bit more relaxed. You've ended up being able to create that melatonin that says it's time to go to bed. So that also can work out, but you may have to actually have a time that the whole family does this. So you're all going through withdrawal together. You can use each other as a support system and be able to handle that. And then as they get older, usually around the ages of like 17 or 18, depending on, again, boys and girls, because our brains are not fully developed until 24, they're better to self-moderate and deal with things themselves, again, depending upon personality type.
Absolutely. Agree with everything you just said there. So much of that has been, the challenge that, I have a 5 and an 8-year-old daughter, a challenge that we've been kind of going through in the past couple of years. And I'd say within the last year, we really kind of drew the line in the sand and said, all right, so here's what we're doing. There is, specific time on the weekends where they can have the technology in the way that they want to, sit down with a tablet, watch videos or whatever. But during the weeknights, like, it's no technology. And it was really hard in the beginning because, at least our 8-year-old now, when she was a couple of years younger, she was really used to having access to these things. And so it took a little bit of time, but it amazes me now because when they're bored, like they kind of give it up almost immediately, asking for this technology, and they find something to do. Like, lo and behold, they go outside and they entertain themselves the way I remember doing when I was a kid before I discovered the Commodore 64.
They're the only... Right, exactly. They're the only children that are on the block. They're playing alone because everyone else is inside and on their technology.
Yes.
It's the same thing with my kids. They are allowed to use technology for maybe doing stick thought, making movies, learning to play chess.
Sure.
But if not, they're writing books, making their own animations, or going outside or playing a game, or they're in the pool, which today I won't see them off their technology. One is because we restrict it, so it does make it a little bit more salacious.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that compared to technology, it's really hard to compete with any other activity that you'd want them to do. If you want them to really enjoy doing a sport and other things, if you do not have a highly self-motivated child, then it's a difficult thing to compete with. And so taking out that, getting them ready for the boredom that will be school is a gift that you can give to your children. And so right now would be a great time to start that by limiting the amount of tech, getting ready for their time when they're going to go to bed, dealing if they have any school anxiety, bringing them to the school, running through what they have to getting their school supplies. Because parents also, we get anxious as well. We're often delaying that anxiety by going on technology ourselves, or, looking at Facebook instead of getting the other things ready that we kind of hear in the back of our head we have to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that speaking from a personal level, like I can sort of, be so anxious of like, they're watching so much YouTube, and it really might not be that much that they're really watching, but they feel that, and so it's better than just complaining about it. Do something about it, like make you talk to us about what we can do. So
we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Georgia Dow, iMore, and so many other awesome things online. Where do you want people to follow you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm sometimes still there. It's at Georgia_Dow.
Right on. Georgia, we really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.